Listen Up is back looking at a country in a war crimes trial for a past they'd rather not face. Cambodia and its killing fields. The reign of the Khmer Rouge in 1975 transformed Cambodia into a concentration camp. This old high school is now a genocide museum because in 1975 to 79, it was actually a prison, a torture chamber. Of the 20,000 people who made this place their last stop on Earth, only 7 survived. While the United Nations works through the War Crime Tribunal to prosecute such crimes, Cambodians have a different perspective on justice. Belief in God was part of the identity of Cambodia that the Khmer Rouge terror attempted to wipe out in its social engineering. But it's now part of the society here who is putting meaning to how to build a new life in Cambodia. Bill Labazou is a Canadian missionary and university professor here who's been watching the Eastern approach to justice over a past legacy of terror.
In Cambodia, which is a Buddhist country, they have a strong belief in karma. And so for Cambodians, they don't necessarily want to see justice done here. They don't want to see the Pol Pot and the others who initiated the genocide to suffer here because they don't want to mess up their bad karma. In other words, they want to see them come back as a cockroach or something lower. Whereas if we began to serve justice here and began to punish them while they are still alive, that's actually going to improve their karma in their next life.
And leaving that sense of justice suspended while life goes on here is part of why Cambodians have a country needing urgent help from charity and justice groups.
Well, they completely destroyed the infrastructure. Cambodia in general, and specifically Phnom Penh, was a very beautiful city. Singapore was actually designed after Phnom Penh. Now, the war and then the following Pol Pot years completely destroyed the infrastructure. And so the education is gone, power, sewage, all of those kinds of things have been destroyed. And so now people are trying to recover from that, but the people who are trying to recover from that are suffering the long-term effects of the trauma that they went through.
Corruption and family trauma, including the sale of children and sex trafficking, mark their realities.
But I suppose there's quite a large percentage that have no parenting skills. I guess I would attribute some of that to Pol Pot and the Pol Pot era here, in which children then, who of course are the parents now, were this sort of sense of family values were absolutely destroyed. So they were removed from their parents and they were brainwashed with just horrible things that were taught to them. They were taught to kill their parents. Many of them had to kill their family members or their friends or their parents, or betray their parents in some way, and it was pretty common in those days. So, you can imagine the sort of psychological breakdown that would have caused. And those children now being parents, I would attribute some of this to that, not all of it, but it certainly left the entire nation traumatized.
What Cambodians are recovering from is something far worse than a revolutionary aberration. It was, as Time magazine's David Aikman would write, the deadly logical consequence of an atheistic, man-centered system of values, values enforced by human beings with total power who defined their morality from gun barrels.
They have a national identity crisis. They feel like, what have we contributed to the world? I mean, all they can point to is a set of temples that were built in the 9th through the 14th centuries up in Siem Reap and Angkor Wat. Aside from that, most Cambodians that I speak to feel like, what have we done that we can show the world is something that Cambodia has contributed. I think if you were to stop the Khmer Rouge Tribunal right now without a sense of completion and conclusion, in some sense that those most responsible for what had happened, and all the atrocities, without holding them accountable for what they did, I think would just be another hole in the hearts of this nation. The Buddhist culture is one in which it's driven by karma and fate, and so what you enter the world with, whatever state you enter the world in, what community you enter it in, you know, that's your fate, that's your destiny, that's what you have been born with. You do the best you can do, but there's not the idea of the Christian God that has uniquely created each of us and given us each that dignity and beauty and specialness that's worthy just for that reason of protection and of love and care.
And what about when you come up against the Christian view versus the karmic view? How do you sort that out?
Karma infiltrates every part of society, and even the church as well. But part of the whole idea of karma is, you know, it makes forgiveness easier because you're not looking for justice now, which, you know, in some ways, what the Christians here have, the whole view of forgiveness that they've developed in some ways is much more biblical than we have in the West, because they're not so hung up with justice and closure and getting even.
And what about that concept, though, of accountability?
Well, they would have a higher view of that it's not going unaccounted for. They're going to pay a price for that. It's just that it's not our job to take care of that. It's not our job to see that justice is done, to hold them accountable. That's the job of a Buddhist would believe, the job of karma. A Christian in Cambodia would believe that that's the job of God and of judgment.
When Listen Up returns, how one man made his own peace with the regime that killed his family. That story next.
Closed captioning provided by Duca Financial Services Credit Union. Discover more affordable banking at duca.com.